This video is presented by MyBookie.ag. What's up, guys? Here are my predictions for UFC 258 happening this Saturday. It's not the most stat card, but there are like 3 or 4 fights that are worth your attention just to see what happens. And then, of course, you have the main event, which is one of the best championship stylistic matchups in recent times. The organization really put up a guy that should challenge such a dominant champion in Kamaru Usman in every aspect of the game. Everybody should love that fight. But we're going to start with a good prospect in Rodolfo Vieira versus the young, talented Anthony Hernandez. A lot of people are pretty high on Rodolfo Vieira, who's coming from the world of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, one of the most accomplished Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artists to ever compete in the UFC. He's a physical specimen, so strong on the ground. When he gets a grip on you, it's that different level, man. It's a guy who's been doing this at the highest level for a very, very long time. And in comparison, as someone as inexperienced as Anthony Hernandez, if he gets taken to the ground, it's gonna be problems for him, man. We all know the fight hits the mat, Vieira is probably going to dominate. But can he get it there? How does Vieira get the fight to the ground usually? It's always that double leg takedown. Blast double, he generally tries to time it under punches, gets you while you overextend. His drive is decently powerful, but he usually gets his takedowns when he pushes you up against the cage, lifts and slams, tries to get your back immediately. He is a wizard on the ground, man. Nothing Hernandez is going to do down there, I think, is going to give any problems to Vieira. But Hernandez is the better striker. Vieira is a bit one-dimensional. He's good at moving around, actually pretty athletic footwork, but in terms of striking, offensively delivering damage and blocking and getting away from shots, it's not on the level of Hernandez. Hernandez is way faster, he has whipping punches to get around the guard, and he definitely has more knockout power. But where it can go bad for Hernandez is the way he defends strikes. He'll move around, try to find an angle, and bombard you with a huge explosion of combinations, push you against the cage, and just unload on you. But when his opponent throws strikes at him, he stops his movement. He kind of just stays in front of you, and he only uses now trunk movement. Tries to bob and weave and duck and dodge instead of moving his feet. Whenever strikes get thrown at him, he stops moving his feet. What does that mean? Simply, if Vieira just fakes up high, like makes it look like he's going to throw some big right hand, it's going to cause Anthony Hernandez to stop his footwork. When he stops his footwork, he's going to be planted in front of Vieira, and it gives Vieira a perfect opportunity to shoot in a double leg takedown. When you're moving your head and not moving your feet, it's an easier target for a takedown. So ultimately, my prediction for this fight, I'm going to go with Rodolfo Vieira. I think he's going to get a second round submission due to a rear naked choke. But Hernandez is a talented fighter. He's very athletic, very fast, and I think in the future, he can be something very special. And then we go to Kelvin Gastelum versus Heinisch. We all know how Kelvin fights. He goes at it the same in every single fight. Always bouncing back and forth, looking for the big left hand, usually sets up off a jab or a right hook. Sometimes he'll have a left kick in there, and he's pretty good at backing away from punches so he can counter with his own left hand. He's one of the most powerful punchers in the middleweight division. He lands that left hand, the opponent usually goes down. Heinisch is way more well-rounded. He has better kicks, he's a good boxer, he has pretty good wrestling, offensively, defensively. It's hard to take him to the ground. As you saw when he fought Derek Brunson, his grappling is solid as well. He's a tough guy with a really good chin and some smooth footwork in the cage. He'll shift into his punches almost like TJ Dillashaw. He'll throw things out there like double feinting into a switch left straight, then looks to cut you off with a right hook and then tries to attack you on the other side with a high kick. There's things out there that can absolutely trick someone who is a bit more one-dimensional like Kelvin Gastelum. And it seems like Kelvin's biggest weakness in the middleweight division is the wrestling and the grappling. When people try to take him to the ground, he usually works in this division because of how small he is. And at times, it seems like he doesn't even expect to get taken to the ground. And from there, the submissions come relatively easy, that it is a bit shocking after so many years Kelvin hasn't yet addressed that sort of hole. He tries to explode out of positions on the ground and it leaves him open for a leg lock or an arm triangle or someone getting his back or something like that. It's a bit of reckless escaping from the grappling exchanges, and Heinisch can absolutely take advantage of those as well. He's not on the level of Jack Hermanson or Chris Weidman when it comes to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but Heinisch is solid, man. The way I can see Kelvin Gastelum winning this fight is if Heinisch gets tired in the fight, gasses out by the third round and falls into the left hand, or he rushes in and gets countered for it, because there are times where Heinisch will recklessly dart in there by switching stances, and it does leave openings for counter hooks around the guard. But ultimately, my prediction for this fight, I'm going to go with Heinisch. I think Kelvin is slowly starting to get picked apart, figured out, as he's kind of been fighting the same in every single bout for years on years. And someone like Heinisch, who's been watching Kelvin for a long time, I think he has so many tools in his game. I think he can go for the takedown as a counter or even using it as he shifts forward. He has a lot of high kicks that are going to be problematic for Kelvin Gastelum. I actually think the high kick is going to be a huge weapon for Ian Heinisch. They come out quick and they're very heavy. And ultimately, I think his footwork should be able to retreat from a lot of the punches from Kelvin Gastelum. So I'm going to go with Ian Heinisch and I'm going to go by a decision win. And then we go to the main event. Kamaru Usman versus Gilbert Burns. There seems to be a lot of people who are not too excited about this fight. They think Usman's just going to dominate. And then there's another party who believe that Gilbert Burns is going to shut out and finish Kamaru Usman. There's not a lot of people in between that think that this is just going to be a good fight or something like that. They think Usman's going to dominate or Burns is going to finish him. And because that, there's going to be a lot of I told you so's after this fight. First thing we got to note, and it's a very important thing coming into this, they were training partners, and not only training partners, they trained together for a very long time. They know everything about each other. They know how each other strikes, their tendencies, their weaknesses, their insecurities even. They know everything about each other when it comes to the fight game. And they're both telling the public, my opponent knows what happens in the training room. He knows what I can do to him. They're both saying it about each other. Usman is not really given as many specifics of what happened. Burns is though. Burns is kind of breaking it down to where Usman knows the fight is going to be problematic for him because it's happened in the training room multiple times. He said, I can submit him anywhere, and he starts laughing about it. He goes, I could submit him anywhere, on my back, on top, against the cage, standing, and he knows that. So what that tells me is if he is actually that confident, Burns doesn't strike me as someone who is like super egotistical or a liar or something like that. He never really comes across as such. He seems like a pretty honest guy, pretty nice guy. When he says something like that, it does make me think, man, is Burns that much higher level than Kamaru Usman that anytime they start tangling up with each other, Usman's in danger of getting submitted? If that is the case, Gilbert Burns can submit Usman whenever they grapple with each other, Usman is probably going to just straight up lose this fight. Because Usman's best chance of winning this is in the clinch, 100%. He does not want to take down Gilbert Burns, especially early when they're both dry. We saw Usman fight Demian Maia, who is the best Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artist in the welterweight division. Gilbert Burns is a close second. Usman attempted 0 takedowns against Maia. He did not want anything to do with the ground game. He chose the path of least resistance. Ultimately, he knew he was a better striker and more powerful than Maia. That is not necessarily the case against Gilbert Burns. So he's fighting someone who also is an elite Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artist. Someone who could submit anybody at a blink of an eye. He's second to Demian Maia. But this guy has legit scary striking. Power, even more important, speed in his strikes and movements. He's more athletic. He switches stances. He's actually an amazing striker. In a way, you can kind of say Gilbert Burns has a mix of things of all of Kamaru Usman's recent opponents. Not on the same level, but a notch below. He has the striking of Jorge Masvidal. He has the wrestling of Colby Covington. He has the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu of Demian Maia. Not on the same level, just a notch below theirs. He has the power that Colby doesn't have. He has the striking and wrestling that Demian Maia does not have. He has the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu threat and the preparation that Jorge Masvidal did not have. Gilbert Burns is a very well-rounded fighter. So when you look at it on paper like that, Burns is a better grappler and he's a better striker. He's just not a better wrestler and he's probably not better in the clinch. Where's Usman going to go in this fight? He's going to try to get into the clinch, put up against the cage like he does to everybody. Body shots, foot stomps, knees to the body, all sort of stuff. That is his best place in the fight. That is his most comfortable and the most dominant position he can have against Gilbert Burns because Burns is so much faster. He can be better at range. He's definitely better in close quarters. He can even go after Usman with some takedowns just to see what happens, just to cause even a scramble, expose a neck for even a split second, and that's enough for Burns to snatch that up. When you start to really think about the fight, it starts to sound like Usman needs to survive, especially for the first 3 rounds. He can possibly try to go for the finish here and there or try to deliver some damage on Gilbert Burns, maybe from a distance with his significant long reach, but man, he might get blitzed down from there. Gilbert Burns might be able to slip maybe a jab or a right straight, and he comes in close with an overhand or a left hook or something like that, and Usman just does not see it coming because the thing about Usman's punches are the form of the actual punch is very clean. It's nice, but the setups and the retraction, the beginning and the end of the punch are lacking a bit. He drops his hands after he throws them, and that's a huge opening where Gilbert Burns could land that overhand. Usman's feints usually come in the form of faking takedowns, but Burns doesn't care about that. Also, Burns has the freedom to throw kicks at Usman. Usman does not check leg kicks. He stands heavy on his feet. The calf kicks, just like you saw with Poirier versus Conor, that's also a weapon in this one. But Usman does have a counter to that. He doesn't necessarily have to take down Burns. He can catch a kick and rise up into a clinch and push up against the cage. He can use the kicks instead of trying to go for that single leg and take it to the ground. He can go for the single and just push it against the cage without trying to take it to the ground. That's a great counter for Usman in this fight. And now here's the other thing we got to talk about now. So we talk about the skills and the techniques and what they got over each other and stuff like that, what it looks like on paper. But now we talk about the coaching. And what happened there? What happened with the training camp? Kamaru Usman is not with his usual trainers. He's training with Trevor Whitman, Justin Gaethje, and those guys over there. That can be a good and bad thing. There's a pro and con when you talk about Trevor Whitman and his camp. They mostly focus on striking, especially boxing. Not so much on the kicks, not much on Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and the wrestling is probably not going to matter that much. Usman already has a huge advantage over wrestling against Gilbert Burns. But then you look at Gilbert Burns, and he has a lot more options. He has many more people that not only are experts in different areas of the game, such as wrestling, boxing, Muay Thai, all that stuff, but he's stuck with the same trainers and the same sparring partners. Everybody in Gilbert Burns' gym knows exactly what Usman does, and that's what they're going to be teaching him. And Burns even said it. He said, my training partners are telling me, hey, Usman does this well, we got to train for this. He has a weakness here, we got to train for this. That is a huge advantage for Gilbert Burns, because Usman has never fought with his new coaches and his new sparring partners. He's never had them in his corner yet. They never had to deal with him in the corner. I think Trevor Whitman will do a very good job in the corner. He's a very calm guy, very methodical and all that stuff. And it seems like Usman is also that way. But Burns said Usman is not like that. After a round concludes, he's kind of wide-eyed. And he doesn't think that Trevor Whitman will be able to be as effective with Usman than the guys who have actually raised Usman as an MMA fighter. Henry Hooft and all those guys. But Usman may show something different in this fight, in his boxing, in his footwork and all that stuff. Maybe he comes out there and actually outstrikes Burns, which would be pretty interesting. Establishes more jabs, goes to the body probably. But that is asking a lot going right into the first fight with a new coach. That's highly speculative. Off of what I know from these two, my prediction for this fight, I'm going to go with Gilbert Burns. I'm going to go with the upset. I'm going to go with the challenger, dethroning the first champion in the past year and a half. And I think Gilbert Burns is going to win by a decision. I think Usman's chin and his heart are going to allow him to stay in this fight. I think he's going to get outpointed for the most part, especially because of the damage. I think Usman's going to have more control time in terms of, in the clinch and stuff like that. But I think the damage is all going to be on Gilbert Burns' side. He's going to try to finish the fight whenever it goes. And I think Burns should be pretty good for 5 rounds. Against Tyron Woodley, he looked perfect for 5 rounds. Not tired at all. And if he starts to pressure Usman backwards because he lands some good shot or landed a lot of leg kicks on him, Usman is going to be in such big trouble. As soon as Usman starts backing up away from Burns, that's when the fight is going to be more dominated by Gilbert Burns. Whether you believe that Gilbert Burns is going to be Usman or Usman is going to be Burns, I think we should all pretty much agree that the betting odds on that one is a little bit too lopsided. But that could be great when you go and bet on the fight with mybookie.ag. The best sports book with the best lines, period. MyBookie has it all. From betting your favorite fights to even trying to predict who Conor McGregor's next fight is going to be, there's many ways you can go and bet on MyBookie. And just like this card, man, there are interesting odds. The main event, the Gastelum vs. Heinisch fight, Jim Miller vs. Bobby Green. Very interesting odds with many opportunities to win big. And of course, a parlay would multiply your earnings by putting up a lineup of fighters that you are confident in winning. All you got to do is sign up with mybookie.ag and use a deposit bonus. MyBookie will match up your first deposit halfway all the way up to $1,000. That means if you deposit $200, you get an extra $100 in free money to play with. Just use the promo code WEASEL to activate this offer. This promo code WEASLE to take advantage of MyBookie's sign-up offer. Visit mybookie.ag today where you bet, you win, and when you win, you get paid. And like I was talking about, the betting odds are a bit interesting. First of all, Brian Keller versus Ricky Simone should not be that lopsided. Simone is of course going to be the favorite, but Brian Keller comes back in these fights that nobody thinks he's going to win in. He usually gets a finish in these kind of fights and he overperforms. Simone also got knocked out not too long ago. I do think he's going to win, but I will not be shocked at all if Keller pulls out that victory. Of course, the main event, I do not agree with the gap between them. In fact, I do think Burns is going to win. I can see Usman, of course, as being the favorite. No more than 2-1. No more. This is almost a 3-1 favorite. Kind of plays into the fact that everybody believes Usman is just going to dominate Gilbert Burns. And of course, the Ian Heinisch and Kelvin Gastelum fight. I do think Heinisch is going to win, but logically looking at it, I don't think Kelvin should be even a 2-1 favorite. I think minus 150 is like max for Kelvin Gastelum. And most of the other ones I pretty much agree with. So I hope you guys enjoyed the predictions. If you did, make sure to thumbs up, drop a comment, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. I'm giving Eminem a run for his money.